Our next guest, Peter Sefton-Williams, when he heard he had an incurable motor neuron disease, he immediately made plans to end his life.
But after some months and after some more tests, he was told he actually had multifocal motor neuropathy, a disease that mimics the symptoms of motor neuron disease and isn't terminal and is treatable.
Well, we're joined now by Peter himself, former journalist and marketing manager. Peter, your story is extraordinary and it feels particularly pertinent at the moment with the assisted dying bill going through Parliament. Just take us back to that initial diagnosis, if you would,
yes.
and what your symptoms were and what the prognosis was.
Yes, my hand started to tremble, fasciculations, I think the technical term,
Yeah.
and I had muscle wasting and weakness in my hand. So I went to a GP who referred me to a very eminent Harley Street neurologist who did a whole barrage of tests over 3 or 4 weeks. And it was on the 29th of January I was summoned in to be given the news that I had motor neuron disease.
And you, Peter, to interrupt you, you dreaded that might be the diagnosis.
Yes.
Because you knew enough about it to know how
That's right.
absolutely appalling.
I thought it might be Parkinson's or MS or something, but I thought, please don't let it be motor neuron. Anyway, it was. And he said, although I'm going to write that it's suspected, in fact, I have to tell you there is no doubt whatsoever that you have motor neuron disease, and that you typically you can live between 1.5 and 4 or 5 years with it.
And how old were you at that point, if you don't mind me asking?
70, yeah. But it can come very quickly, the end. So he said you should make no plans beyond 6 months, was what he said. But he sent me for a second opinion to a very eminent specialist in a London teaching hospital under the NHS this time, and he confirmed that was indeed the diagnosis.
And you did make plans, but you made plans to take control of your own death.
I did. I was so panicked, really. I live alone, and the symptoms, as you know, you can't breathe and your muscle wastes and you can't speak, can't swallow. And I thought, I can't possibly manage this. So actually, the day after the diagnosis, on the 30th of January, I contacted Dignitas because they said it would take 6 months to do the paperwork. So I thought I have to do this in a hurry. Anyway, when the second diagnosis came, I had by then the panic had subsided, and I must say the NHS was very good. I had breathing specialists, swallowing specialists, a whole barrage of specialists were assigned to me. And I was asked to take part in drug trials and so on. I also saw a palliative care specialist to talk about my end-of-life care. But then a funny thing happened. As spring turned into summer, I wasn't getting any worse. And oddly enough, I was even getting slightly better. So they sent me for some more it's nerve conductivity tests. And the specialist then said, no, this is not motor neuron disease.
Was this I'm not going to name any specialists, but was this the same specialist you'd seen earlier?
No.
Was this a completely different one?
Completely different.
This is a third one?
A third one, exactly, a third one. And he said, no, you've got something called multifocal motor neuropathy, which I'd obviously never heard of. It's very rare. It mimics in the early stages motor neuron disease, but it's a mild disease. Nobody dies of it, and it's largely curable. So I'm hoping in a few months to start treatment for that.
What was that moment like emotionally for you? Because you'd signed up to Dignitas, you'd done the research, but you'd also driven to Beachy Head thinking that despite your faith that you had, and it was such an awful decision, but you were thinking about taking your own life under those circumstances.
I was.
What was that moment like when you realised?
You would think I would be elated. In fact, it's like I liken it to standing in front of a firing squad for 9 months, and then somebody says, by the way, we're not going to shoot you. You wouldn't jump around with joy, and I didn't. And I'm still trying to mentally get over the trauma of it, if I'm frank.
Did you ever have a conversation with those initial doctors who got the diagnosis wrong?
No.
I wonder if they know.
They do now.
I do know that the initial doctor knows, because when I did a previous interview, I got an email from him personally to say, I hear the diagnosis has changed. No apology.
Really?
No.
That's what he said.
Because of liability and all
That's
that.
right.
But Peter, this could have been cataclysmic.
Of
you
course.
could have gone to Switzerland
Yes.
and ended your life, or you could have taken the more extreme option.
And two specialists, two very senior specialists had said, I definitely had it, and I had, in the worst case, between 2 and 6 months to live.
Does this, I mean, we still have, don't we, in this country, a reverence for the doctor, and the assumption that, as my mother used to say, doctor's not God, you know.
No.
And this is a problem, isn't it?
It is. I think MPs who are voting for this bill, they'll have to do it with their eyes wide open to the fact that mistakes will be made and people will die needlessly. And I could have opted for that course, and people would have said perhaps how brave I was, and I wish to die with dignity and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But in fact, the truth is, I hope to have many more years left in me yet.
And would your story have become public if it wasn't for this bill, or were you inspired to talk about it because of this?
It was, and a friend said, but you could easily be dead now. And if this bill had been passed, you and others like you could have died on the basis of an error.
So were you wholeheartedly against assisted dying?
No, I wouldn't say, no, I can't say that, because when I had that diagnosis, I considered it myself. So it would be hypocritical of me to say I'm completely against it. And what I would say to the MPs who are considering it, don't look at the principle. We all understand the principle. If somebody is suffering, they want their suffering to end. And I was in that same position. But it's the problem when you get down to the detail as to how, is it 6 months? Is it 9 months? Do you actually have what you think you have? Is 2 doctors enough?
Clearly not in your case.
And a judge as well has to get involved.
And a judge. What would the judge say?
And mistakes are made a lot.
Mistakes are made a lot, yes.
I mean, it's it's a different issue, but there was a poll last week which showed more people support the death penalty now, particularly younger people. But my problem's always been about the death penalty. They get it wrong.
And the principle is exactly the same here.
Exactly.
A lot of people would say, I support the death penalty in principle, but in practice, there are too many mistakes made to wish to go ahead with it. And I felt that there's a very strong parallel with this case, that although I understand why people want to terminate their lives at the end, the practicalities of it are such that if you make a mistake, you can't rectify it.
So you are a Roman Catholic.
I am.
As am I. So when you were contemplating, or you'd signed up for Dignitas, that you were effectively committing yourself to what we would call a mortal sin. I
was, yeah.
How troubled were you by the ethical side of it?
My panic and my fear was such that I thought I will just have to go ahead with it.
And account to your maker on the other side.
Exactly, yeah. But then it took about 4 weeks for that terrible sense of panic to die down. And I realised the care I was getting, the end-of-life care, was going to be quite comprehensive. And I thought, well, I shall just have to deal with this.
And do you reconcile it now in a sense that, we believe, if you believe in fate or whether it's spirituality, that everything happens for a reason? That actually you have been handed
that's a very
important job now?
That's a very good point. I don't want to sound kind of missionary about it. I'm really only here to tell my story, and people can make their own conclusion. But
can I ask you, it's very private, personal, so you may not want to answer it. Did you talk to your priest about what you were doing?
I told my, several priests about my diagnosis.
And did you talk to them about Dignitas and suicide?
No, I kept that. That was entirely private. However, of course, I have shown various people. They send you a document, and the date on that document. So I have now shown it to people that they give you a kind of passport affair.
Yeah. Well, it's an
Fascinating.
absolutely
Yeah.
fascinating story and a really important story, actually, I think, isn't it?
And we're very glad you're still with us, Peter.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you.
Yeah.
So am I.
Lots of years
many more years ahead of
happy and
you,
healthy.
I hope.
Thank you very much.
Peter Sefton-Williams.